So an early morning flight, we've made it to Manchester Airport to catch our flight to Dusseldorf, and yeah, I'm expecting a few fans on this flight, so we'll see how busy it is, but relatively smooth journey here, and onwards to the terminal. So an early start here ahead of the trip to Dortmund. We're here in Manchester, flying over to Dusseldorf first, and then heading into Dortmund for tonight's press conference. But yeah, just a quick catch up. Newcastle obviously heading to Germany in great spirits after that brilliant 1-0 win over Arsenal. So much to unpack from that one still, really, if you think about it. But look, the game ended really niggly. As you can see on the website now, Jamal Lascelles telling us after the game about how some of the Arsenal players just walked off, wouldn't shake hands. Jorginho snubbed Jamal Lascelles when he stuck his hand out to shake after the game. So not a great end on that score. But Newcastle won the game, and obviously, you know, Mikel Arteta has made his feelings clear now. Arsenal releasing a statement, they've taken it very personally. But Newcastle won the game 1-0, and that's the result that carries them to Germany. So this is a tough game. Newcastle know they've got to go there and win. They've just beaten the likes of Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. They've just beat Arsenal, so they should go here in good spirits. They know victories are really important, so let's hope they can get that win and keep them on track. But we'll be heading to the press conference later, have a little look around the stadium, see how that's looking, and following the fans throughout Dortmund on this huge trip for Newcastle United in the Champions League. Well, here we are in Germany. Nothing too impressive to show you just yet, but we have landed safely. The flight, of course, as we expected, was full of Newcastle fans, which was great to see. Newcastle fans back in Europe and travelling to see the team overseas once more, having qualified for the Champions League last year. So lots of Newcastle fans here for this one. We're now going to move from Dusseldorf into Dortmund, and then we'll be heading to the press conference. Well, we've arrived in Dortmund ahead of the match, and it's really busy around here. Lots of Newcastle United fans arriving, lots of Dortmund fans as well, surprisingly soaking up the atmosphere 24 hours early, going into the club shop, getting into the mood for it. And as we know, this is a big game which Newcastle probably, if we're being honest, need to win this game, but they should have no fears after beating Arsenal, after beating Manchester United. There's no reason why they can't come to a place like this and win, and we know what the atmosphere holds, but this is what Europe's all about for Newcastle. This is why they battled so hard to get into the Champions League. So this is a real opportunity for Newcastle to come to a place like Dortmund and really pull off a famous result, and I think that they're more than capable of doing it. I mean, obviously Dortmund got beat 4-0 off Bayern Munich on Saturday, which obviously isn't the best result for them, but at the end of the day, Newcastle went to Milan after they'd been hammered off Inter. So look, there's some similarities to the last European game. If Newcastle got a point, I'm sure they wouldn't complain, but the win is really needed if they want to wrestle control back into their own hands. So we're here in Dortmund. We're going to go to the press conference very soon, and hopefully we'll get a little peek of the stadium inside, and we'll be able to bring that back to you later. Well, here we are outside Borussia Dortmund Stadium, ahead of tomorrow night's big game, which is about to go in for the press conference now. So we'll see what Eddie Howe has got to say ahead of this crunch game here in Germany. And Newcastle, if they can get the win, then they get everything back in their control. I keep mentioning that on this trip, but certainly Eddie Howe has that winning mentality, and he'll believe Newcastle can come here and win. As I mentioned before, draw not so good for Newcastle. because then you're relying on other teams. But at the moment, Newcastle fully focused on the task in hand, and they go into this one oozing with confidence. So let's see what Eddie Howe's got to say. Well, behind me, the famous yellow wall, which Newcastle United will face tomorrow night in this Champions League Group F encounter at this magnificent venue, and one where we know for a fact the noise is going to be unbelievable from the home fans. We had a taste of it in the game at St James's Park, where it just set the tone for the match, set the rhythm for Dortmund in the game, and Newcastle will be trying to somehow disrupt that rhythm in this game. Newcastle fans are going to be over there in the corner. It's a standing area, so they'll be making plenty of noise. It's whether they can be heard in this unbelievable stadium. I believe they will. If Newcastle take the lead, believe me, you will hear Newcastle United fans in this stadium, because this is a trip of a lifetime for many of the fans who've come over here. We've all seen Dortmund's ground on the TV, and to see it here is absolutely breathtaking. So Newcastle will hope they can come here and make a good account of themselves. It's going to be an unbelievable night. You can feel the tension around the place already. The stadium, it's quite mild weather here, so I think the fans are going to enjoy their time here and in Dusseldorf, many of them building up to the game in a city which is not too far from here. But hopefully Newcastle can get the result that will keep them in contention to qualify for the next stage of the Champions League, help them get into the last 16. They were unlucky against Dortmund at St James's Park. If things fall their way here against a Dortmund team who's just been thrashed by Bayern Munich, you never know. Newcastle might have a great chance here.
Good evening, welcome to...
Well, Eddie Howe has just held his press conference here in Dortmund, and it was another interesting one, to be totally honest. But obviously there was yet more injury agony from this press conference, with reporters learning that Dan Burn is going to miss 2 months with a spinal problem after going down awkwardly against Arsenal. So Newcastle will be without the lad from Blythe for 2 months potentially, and that's a huge blow for Eddie Howe, because Dan Burn is such an instrumental part of everything behind the scenes. He's much more than just a left back. He's a leader. He can play centre back as well. So Eddie Howe has been dealt a real blow here in the build up to this game, and compounded by the fact that Matt Targett has picked up a hamstring injury in the previous game against Man United, which we knew about. What we didn't know was he could be missing for 3 months. So 2 huge injury blows to report on, first and foremost here in Dortmund. Also, Eddie Howe in his press conference, he was asked a lot about Arsenal again and what Mikel Arteta has been saying. He was happy to play all that down. He was happy to say, look, I'm only focused on Newcastle United. I'm not bothered about other teams. And I thought that was exactly the right way to play it, given all the noise that's come from Arsenal over one defeat. So Eddie Howe brilliantly dealing with all those questions that came his way there. I asked him about the must-win nature of this fixture. It's almost like Newcastle, if they don't win, then everything's up in the air. But, you know, Dortmund here lost 4-0 against Bayern Munich, so that's got to put Newcastle in good stead in some ways. Eddie Howe said, look, I don't worry about must-win nature of games, because I try and win every game that I play for Newcastle United. So really positive stuff from Eddie, as we all expect. This place is looking fantastic in the build-up to tomorrow night's Group F encounter. There's a good feeling around the camp, and Eddie Howe confident his team can make amends for that game at St James's Park 2 weeks ago.